As usual, I poured him a glass of warm water and placed it on the table. He said, "Look, our days have become completely devoid of surprises. Should we try breaking up? Maybe it would feel fresher than being together." Chapter 1. David spoke casually, but his attitude was particularly serious. When he suggested breaking up, I didn't feel like he was discussing it with me. It was as if breaking up had been a long-planned decision of his. If there was any hesitation, it was probably about the reasons for breaking up. Freshness sounded absurd yet undeniable. After all, we had indeed been together for too long. I didn't blame him, nor did I blame myself. We could only blame time long enough that we felt more like a married couple than lovers. Yet we weren't married. I didn't think it made sense to cling or try to salvage things. If he felt our relationship was boring, then there must have been something dull about it. So I nodded and told him, "Sure." Then I saw him visibly relax. Maybe he thought I would cry and that breaking up would be a long battle. When I went back to my room to organize my things, he stood by the door watching me. I heard him softly, emotionlessly say, "There's no rush. You can leave tomorrow." But I wanted to leave. I wasn't that clueless. It really had been too long together. It felt like no matter what I did, I could never finish packing. So I changed my strategy, simply gathering the essentials and important items. I dragged everything else to the door and told him, "I'll contact the property management to clean up tomorrow." He was still standing a short distance away, perhaps sensing that I seemed too eager to leave. He said, "Luciana, it really isn't urgent. You can come by tomorrow to pick things up." "Oh," he reminded me. I took the key from my bag and placed it on the shoe cabinet. Delete my fingerprint when you have the time. Chapter 2. It was only when I drove out of the community that I came back to my senses from this hasty breakup. I rarely left David's place this late. Usually, he would be busy in his study, and after handing him warm water, I'd go organize his clothes for the next day. My friends often said I took care of David too meticulously. They joked, "Be careful. He might not appreciate it and instead find you annoying." Little did I expect that would turn out to be prophetic, and he truly found it bothersome. At this age, moving out after a breakup didn't mean being homeless. I had bought my own place a long time ago. It was David who suggested we live together so we could see each other every day after work. Back then, the thing he said most often was, "Luciana, I missed you again today." Maybe saying it too much really did make it annoying. Seeing each other too often probably made it tedious. So, how he once eagerly wanted me to move in with him is now how he desperately wants me to leave. I understood him well. He kept swallowing when he stood at the door. He did this when he was nervous, but also when he was excited. Maybe he was both excited and afraid that I might suddenly change my mind while packing. He had seen friends break up and create chaos, dragging it out for years until they became enemies. I never thought of having such a messy breakup with David. After all, when I still had novelty in his eyes, he truly loved me. Let's not dwell on regrets. It's unrelated to ability, unrelated to time. It's just the nature of human relationships. After all, there were times I found David displeasing. I just never thought it would come to a breakup. After packing up the house, it was already midnight. I canceled the unnecessary alarms. I was really exhausted. So after washing up, I fell asleep immediately. Chapter 3. I was awakened by David's phone call. At 7 in the morning. If it weren't for his call, I could have slept for another hour. After I answered, I heard him ask, "Luciana, where did you put my clothes? I can't find them. Have you checked the bathroom?" When I left abruptly yesterday, his discarded clothes were still in the bathroom hamper. I hadn't gotten around to taking out his new ones to iron. He must have just woken up, feeling a bit dazed, which is why he called me. Now that he was awake, he told me, "Sorry, I called the wrong person." I said, "Okay," and hung up. I have to admit that without David's call, I was already on the edge of waking up naturally. I lay in bed tossing and turning, unable to find sleep again, so I just stared at the ceiling. The room we lived in was specially decorated by David. The crystal chandelier on the ceiling was luxurious and bright. Very beautiful. He said it was a crystal ball he gifted to his princess. Then we laughed and counted how many crystal balls were on that lamp. Yet we could never get the count right. Just when I was about to count again, he hugged me and laughed. Luciana, don't count anymore. They're all yours. I'll give you more in the future. Chapter 4. David was a bit childish and deliberately posted a status declaring his singlehood. This sparked a flurry of comments like, "Are you kidding? No way." After he posted, he probably got busy. As the questioning voices from our mutual friends only grew louder, I had to step in and reply, "Yes. We broke up yesterday. See how quick that was?" Our breakup was already a thing of yesterday. Yet some friends wouldn't let it go, continuing to pry. "Luciana, don't joke around. Your connection with David is something most people can only dream of." I maintained, "It's true, having a connection doesn't mean it's a good fit, right?" I wondered how David felt seeing such advice. I could only feel a pang of nostalgia. When we were amazed by our serendipitous connection, we never imagined we would one day separate. And when it was used as a reason to reconcile, it had already lost all meaning. He should have more resolutely rejected the well-meaning concerns from our friends. What was that saying? The desire to leave can't be stopped. Chapter 5. David and I had crossed paths 3 times. The first time was in front of a restaurant's glass window in a city. He stood outside, backpack on, and knocked on the glass. When I looked up, he pulled out his phone. It read, "Beautiful lady, can I share a table?" Maybe fearing I would decline, he quickly typed a new message and showed me. "I'm catching a train tonight and haven't had the local specialties yet. I hope the beauty can help me out." At that time, I was enjoying my vacation, traveling solo. I hadn't expected to encounter David, also traveling alone. Seeing his anxious yet regretful look, I agreed to let him join me. Once inside, he kept thanking me, saying he had too many places to visit and almost missed the local dishes. He insisted that today's meal was on him. I declined, saying we should just pay for our own meals. We didn't converse much. He seemed genuinely pressed for time, eating quickly. What a shame. I had researched this place beforehand, and the food was famous at the rate he was eating. He'd miss out on the flavor. The second time we met was in another city. My bus stopped next to his at a red light. The architecture in this city was renowned, and while I was looking around, I spotted David looking back at me. We were both surprised, and after a moment, he waved from across the street. I read his lips. What a coincidence. He pointed to the upper right, indicating I should look. Through the swaying leaves, I caught a glimpse of a famous red house. I was planning to visit it, and I hadn't expected to see it from here. Turning back to David, he proudly said, "Isn't it beautiful?" When the light changed, our buses carried us away in different directions. The third time was in yet another city. Thinking back, David and I were like city hoppers, eager to check off places in a short span of time. Suddenly, a heavy rain started, and I ducked under the eaves of a small house to stay dry. Then I saw David approaching with an umbrella. He stood in front of me. What a coincidence. "We meet again," he asked. "Where are you headed?" "I can lend you my umbrella." The rain tapped rhythmically on the umbrella. I replied, "No need. I'm not in a hurry. It's nice to wait here and watch the rain." He closed the umbrella and stood with me under the eaves, sharing the moment, maybe feeling the magic of fate. Our conversation flowed more freely. I asked, "Are you catching a train tonight?" He said, "No, my vacation is almost over. I'll just explore the city one last time before I leave." He inquired about my travel plans, and I told him, "I have to catch a train tonight." He mentioned he hadn't been to my city yet. Perhaps sensing a connection, we exchanged contact information and added each other as friends. As the rain stopped, I stepped out, and he called after me, "Luciana, if I travel to your city, can you be my tour guide?" I waved back with a smile. "You're always welcome." He suddenly decided to visit me, calling to say he had landed at my city's airport. "Luciana, could you come pick me up?" When I drove to get him, it felt surreal, like a dream. After returning to our separate lives, we kept in touch. I think we sensed each other's love for travel, sharing photos from our trips and the sights of our cities. I remember just days ago, David mentioned he liked a girl. He asked me what to do. I said, If you like her, go for it, he asked. But what if we're in different cities? I suggested he find out if she liked long-distance relationships and whether it was worth sacrificing his career for love. I even advised him to think it through carefully. Then he suddenly flew to my city and, upon seeing me, ran over to embrace me. Luciana, I left everything to find you. You can't push me away. At that moment, we were both young and naive, doing foolish things, but it was enough to touch a heart and say, okay, let's be together. What once made us proud eventually faded with time, and each nostalgic thought became more irritating, like a pesky mosquito bite. I wondered if David regretted leaving everything for me in this city. I had no regrets. It was easy to be moved by him. Chapter 6. It was hard to change the habits I formed over the years with David. Even after getting off work, I still found myself researching new dessert or meal recipes. We had many shared interests, like traveling, night runs, and food. He enjoyed tasting dishes while I loved cooking them. Without David urging me that he was hungry, I could finally focus on the tutorials step by step. Since it was still early for our night run, I took the time to experiment with making snowskin mooncakes. I had failed in the past, but this time, I succeeded. Just as I was about to share my success on social media, I came across a post from David. He was out drinking. I used to always warn him to drink less to avoid stomach aches. Now, I should congratulate him. He wouldn't have to hear my nagging anymore. As I was getting ready for my night run, a mutual friend called, asking if I would go pick David up since he had drunk too much. The streetlights weren't very bright, so I decided to turn back. On the way, I'd grab some chilled watermelon juice. I replied, I'm busy. I don't have time. I knew many still held on to hopes of reconciliation. They probably thought we were both acting out of spite, caught up in a quarrel without wanting to give each other an out. So they tried to play mediator, but I didn't need that. And neither did David. I clearly heard David's voice yelling cheers earlier. Suddenly, the noise from his side faded to silence. I realized my friends were worried I'd be angrier hearing David celebrate, so they must have thought he had stepped out of the private room. There was no point in saying more, so I told them, for anything about David, just talk to him. I can't help. Unable to sleep, I grabbed a book and settled into the couch. I loved reading poetry, always eager to break down interesting characters into prettier words and mix them into names. David used to tease me, I bet a naming machine isn't as quick as you. We got together during a breezy season, and I was infatuated with the word wind. So, our living room was named Gentle Breeze, the master bedroom was Caressing Breeze, and the guest room was Warm Wind. The stray cat we often fed was named Wind Fate. Now, the house I lived in had no name. Maybe I had run out of inspiration. I wondered why David called me again. I flipped the page of my book down on the coffee table and answered. He asked, Luciana, how do you make that stomach-soothing soup? Can you teach me? I knew he had overindulged and his stomach hurt. He was busier than I was and rarely cooked. Plus, he lacked interest, so his cooking skills weren't great. I wasn't sure what he could manage in his drunken state even if I explained the recipe. Forget whether he could drink it. I was worried he might set the kitchen on fire. So, I told him, there's stomach medicine in the second drawer to the left of the TV stand. I wrote down the dosage. You can find it. He didn't hang up, and I could hear him walking unsteadily. I couldn't help but wonder how much he had drunk. In the past, when I advised him, he would pay some attention. When my friend called asking me to pick him up, I had just put the soup into a thermos. When he sat on the couch, rubbing his temples after taking off his shoes and clothes, I rushed to the kitchen to bring him the soup. Now, all I could do was tell him where I had left the medicine. He must have found it, saying, "Thanks for bothering you so late." After hanging up, I tried to go back to my book, but I couldn't focus on a single word. I gave up reading and lay in bed, battling insomnia. Chapter 7. After returning from my business trip, I heard that David was seeing someone new. Not surprising. It had been a while since our breakup, and he had clearly stated that I no longer intrigued him. Any girl besides me would feel fresh and curious to him. Our friends gradually accepted the fact of our separation, and the matchmaking voices had lessened. They tried hard to avoid any chance of us running into each other. Fortunately, we really hadn't crossed paths since our breakup. Unfortunately, today was the first time, and it happened while he was on a date. If our meals hadn't already been served, I would have left discreetly. I called the waiter to ask if we could switch to a private room. He apologized, saying all the rooms were full, so I had to sit there, helplessly watching the two of them flirt from across the table with my friend. I asked my friend if we could switch seats. From a certain perspective, David and I were indirectly facing each other. I felt awkward, but my friend wouldn't indulge me. He simply said, "Eat while it's hot. If someone leaves, it'll be him. You're not stalking him, so there's no need to feel guilty." As I listened to my friend, I couldn't help but notice David when I intentionally tried not to look. My friend laughed. "Luciana, are you tired? Why not just be openly curious?" Then he turned to look with me. I saw David's hand tremble as he held his chopsticks, probably realizing we were there, but he hadn't expected things to develop like this. He was dating, while my friends and I were watching him. To me, it didn't seem any different. It was just the same routine of eating, drinking, and chatting, but they were clearly just starting out, and some politeness was still present. For instance, David couldn't eat spicy food, yet the girl put a piece of spicy chicken in his plate, which he ended up eating. My friend commented, "What a bore. Are you full yet? If you are, let's go." When I got home, I cooked a dish of spicy chicken. When David and I first got together, his stomach hadn't been so weak, and I loved spicy food. Even the first restaurant we visited had a variety of spicy dishes laid out before us. He had said back then, "Looks like we have similar tastes." After we started dating, I often experimented with Sichuan cuisine for him. His first words when he got home from work would be, "Luciana, I'm hungry. Is dinner ready?" But as his social engagements increased, his stomach began to have issues, and I slowly replaced those spicy dishes with others. As I took a bite of the dish, the long-lost spiciness filled my mouth. I hadn't had it in ages. Suddenly, I felt that separating from David was actually a good thing. Chapter 8. I heard that David had switched to a few new contacts. My friends laughed at me for being slow. I hadn't even started talking to anyone yet. I had been busy lately, enrolling in a baking class to really cultivate my hobby. Maybe because no one was keeping tabs on me, I could indulge myself freely. So, David was always around for drinking and dining occasions. Naturally, to avoid any awkwardness, I didn't go. I hadn't received any calls from him recently, and he had gradually figured out where things were in the house. Or maybe he could just ask someone else. Time moved on, and if I didn't count the days, I might lose track of how long we had been apart. After graduating from my baking class, I turned down a man's advances. I planned to pause my romantic pursuits and focus on other aspects of my life for a few years. I wanted to pick up the things that had stalled because of David. Maybe that's why I ended up seeing him in front of my door. For a moment, it felt surreal. He looked a bit unfamiliar at first glance. He seemed somewhat worn, not looking any better than when I left. I didn't want to overthink it. He probably had too much to drink. I asked if he was here for something. He replied, "The medicine at home isn't working. My stomach still hurts." I reminded him, "Check if it's expired. If it is, just buy new ones." As I moved past him to open the door, he stopped me. I hadn't expected such a gesture, and it felt like he was hugging me with one arm. I stepped back and looked up at him. "Aren't you leaving?" My refusal was too obvious, and he showed a bittersweet smile. He said, "Luciana, I want the stomach-soothing soup." I took out my phone, found the recipe I had organized, and sent it to him. I told him, "Go home and follow the steps. It should taste fine." He leaned closer. "Luciana, could you make it for me?" I hated that gesture of his. Back then, whenever he called my name like that, I'd look up and he'd take the chance to kiss me. Those were the times he loved me most. Constantly asking, "Luciana, you'll cook for me forever, right?" Seeing I didn't respond, he continued calling my name, "Luciana." I couldn't bring myself to look up. I didn't want to kiss David. I didn't understand why he suddenly needed me, but I had no intention of going back. I noticed he was wearing the pants and shoes I had bought for him. I thought he would have thrown away everything related to me by now. I felt I couldn't stay in the same space with him any longer. His presence would make me involuntarily recall our past. And then I'd remember his words about being tired of me. I said, "You can make it yourself." I've forgotten how. It had been so long since I last cooked that I was out of practice. Our cooking results would probably be similar, so there was no need to argue over who should make it. He didn't stop me again, and I closed the door, leaving him outside. Chapter 9. I still remembered the first time I successfully made chopped pepper fish head. David praised my culinary skills after his first bite. He always said I brought him endless surprises. Just a few days ago, he mentioned something he wanted to eat, and in a few days, I could figure it out. As the aroma filled the house, he would hug me from behind. He'd call out, "Luciana." I'd keep my head down, stirring the dish, not looking at him. He held me tighter. "Luciana, look up at me." When I did, his kiss came down. "Luciana, I'm really lucky, aren't I?" After that, every time he called my name, I'd look up, and a kiss would follow. Sometimes, I'd even knock on his study door and call for him. "David." He'd look up at me. I'd bend down to be at his level. With a smile, I'd continue, "David." Whenever he looked at me, I'd lean in to kiss him. We loved playing that kissing game back then. Our names became signals for kisses. I was grateful that David had sacrificed everything to stay in this unfamiliar city with me. So, I tried my best to be good to him, hoping to repay the relationship that required sacrifice from one side to continue. When he came to see me, he'd tell me, "Luciana, if something's difficult, just bring it to me. Anything that leads me to you is a good thing." In my dreams, I often found myself reminiscing about those times with David. Whenever I realized I was dreaming, I'd force myself to wake up, refusing to dwell on those memories. Perhaps it was a battle between two states of consciousness, where dream Davids held my hands too tightly. I couldn't wake up, caught between indulgence and pain. Chapter 10. I was awakened by David. His urgent, hoarse voice overlapped with the sounds in my dreams. I couldn't distinguish between dream and reality. I asked, "What's wrong?" He said, "Luciana, I've called you several times, and you didn't answer, so I came to check on you." He kept testing my forehead, then said, "Luciana, you have a fever." He still didn't know where things were in my house. Then he asked, "Where's the fever medicine? I'll go get it for you." It was then that I realized the one thing I had forgotten to do since I returned. I hadn't deleted his fingerprints from the door lock. I pushed him away. "No need. I'll just sleep it off." He rummaged through the living room. I had a habit of arranging things in a certain way. The way things were in David's house was similar to mine. He quickly found the medicine near the TV cabinet, and I heard his anxious footsteps pacing back and forth in front of the bedroom door. He was still doing too little. He struggled to find things. After a clattering of noise, I saw him bringing a glass of water to me, ready to help me take the medicine. I took it from him, swallowed the pills, and placed the glass on the bedside table. I looked at him and said, "Thanks. I'm going to sleep." I hoped he would take the hint and leave. Feeling dizzy, I fell asleep quickly. So when I woke up in the evening and saw David sleeping by my bedside, I realized he hadn't left. I was drenched in sweat, and my fever had subsided. As I lay there, I slowly tried to pull my hand from his. He instinctively tightened his grip and opened his eyes to look at me. "Luciana, feeling better?" He reached out to touch my forehead, and I saw him let out a long breath. "You really scared me." Then he asked, "What do you want to eat? I'll go buy it for you." He swallowed repeatedly, his fingers rubbing nervously. The last time I saw him like this was when he forced himself to stay when I broke up with him. But this time? Was he afraid I wouldn't accept his kindness? But why? After seeking novelty, he returned to me? I rejected his offer, urging him to leave. "It's getting dark, and the road is long. You should head back." Not long after he left, there was a knock at my door. He called out, "Luciana, I ordered you your favorite pumpkin porridge." I heard footsteps fade away and went to open the door. The meal he bought was neatly placed on my right side. I found his fingerprints and deleted them. Chapter 11. One of David and my favorite things was revisiting old places. Those moments of our relationship were highlights worth reminiscing about. After getting together, we had planned to visit the city where we first met for our anniversary, but we were so eager that we went on our 100-day mark instead. We took the same train as before. We both enjoyed the slow pace of travel, quietly soaking in the scenery for an entire day. I had even planned to save up to travel nationwide. David promised to accompany me to see all these sights. He said, "Luciana, remember to take me along. Don't leave me behind." On the way, David was more excited than I was. He expressed how he could feel the path I took to meet him. He said with amazement, "Luciana, we were so close step by step." Each step brought us together until he knocked on my window and asked, "Hi, beautiful. Can we share a table?" With my nod, it felt like destiny had sealed our fates. We retraced all the places we had visited together. With him there, everything felt different than it had back then. He took me to places I had missed. While I used to capture the scenery, this time my camera focused on him. He pointed at a tree, calling, "Luciana, look, a squirrel." I missed the squirrel but captured his smiling face instead. In that moment, his eyes were filled with me. Chapter 12. For a friend's birthday, I made the cake myself. As I entered with the cake, I saw David was there too. It wasn't surprising. We shared so many mutual friends. I chose a seat near the door, keeping my distance from him. It was the first time we'd seen each other in front of friends since the breakup. Maybe enough time had passed. The awkwardness of the breakup had faded. So, being in the same space with David felt normal to me. At least, that's what I thought. My friends didn't seem to agree. Their eyes darted between us until they confirmed I was fine. And then the atmosphere brightened. As the cake was being devoured, the birthday star smeared a bit of frosting on my face. "Luciana, it's delicious. Thank you," he said. Just then, I got a phone call and grabbed a wet wipe as I headed outside. The call was unexpected. It was a long-lost college senior. He bluntly asked, "Luciana, I heard you're single again?" I caught the surprise in his tone. At a recent college reunion, I mentioned our breakup. Since David hadn't driven me there, I didn't know how he found out. Back in college, Augustine and I had interacted frequently due to our club activities, but we lost touch after graduation. He asked, "When can we meet?" When I turned, I saw David watching. I asked, "What's up?" Augustine said, "Let's meet and talk." Since I wasn't asking him, I said I'd call back and hung up. Looking back at David, he seemed to have overheard my call. I asked him, "What's going on?" He started swallowing hard and exhaling. "The cake is pretty good. Thanks, Luciana. Could you teach me?" I stood there, silent. I didn't want to teach him. He changed the topic. "They're playing games inside, but I always lose. So I escaped. I'm good at games." David would often seek my help when he lost. Friends joked, "Don't play anymore. She's single. No one to help you." I got up. "I'll check it out." He blocked me, calling my name, "Luciana, Luciana." Even after we broke up, I still cared about the signals in our names. I was too scared to look at him. I feared he'd kiss me. Noticing his finger almost breaking the skin on his thumb, I heard him say above me, "Luciana, how about we get back together?" From his earlier actions, I guessed he might have that intention. I didn't expect him to say it out loud. After all, it's never pleasant to face such a self-reversal. I probably still had frosting on my face. The scent lingered. I frantically wiped it away, feeling like my carefully done makeup was ruined. When I was flustered, I'd repeat the same actions unconsciously. David held my hand, rubbing it to calm me down. "Luciana, take a breath." I tried hard to stay calm, not letting his sudden proposal disrupt my thoughts. Why now? Is it just because I learned to make cake? That's not enough reason to come back to me. He looked like I hit a nerve and kept apologizing. When he broke up with me, he hadn't acted like this, proudly presenting a seemingly valid reason. Chapter 13. When I opened the door again, everyone was curiously staring at me. It took me a moment to realize why they looked so surprised. Usually, in this situation, David would have lost badly and come out looking for me to defend him. But now, he was standing right behind me, no longer boasting loudly. "Luciana's here. Your glory has ended." They probably thought David and I had reconciled. As I sat down to play cards, my hair kept falling into my eyes. A friend handed me a hair tie, and someone behind me reached over to tie my hair expertly. The friend winked at me, hinting there was something going on between us. I ignored him and threw down a card. Then I heard, "You lost again." As friends passed out juice, David naturally handed me a glass of watermelon juice. I played a few more rounds, and when the birthday star did an octopus dance, I seized the opportunity to escape. By this time, there was little left to entertain, so I decided to visit my favorite dessert shop. When I arrived, I found David already there, waving me over. "Luciana, I ordered for you." It dawned on me what he meant by boring. We had been together for so long. We knew each other's habits too well. We could anticipate each action and sentence. Maybe, as he said, there was no novelty left. Pouring out my heart, with no reservations, led to this outcome. He had ordered all my favorites and even got me a cup of coffee. I had a habit of drinking coffee, but it kept me up at night. To avoid disturbing his sleep, I'd sit in the living room with a book. If he found me missing in the middle of the night, he'd come keep me company. "Luciana, is this a case of pain and pleasure?" he'd ask. I'd smile and say, "Yeah." It was like how I had urged him to quit drinking. He could never manage, and now he complained of a sore stomach. He suddenly brought up the first time I made tiramisu. That wasn't my first attempt, just the first time I showcased my skills in front of him. When he said he wanted tiramisu, I went home after work, bought the ingredients, and made it for him. When he returned and smelled the delightful aroma, he asked, "Luciana, did you buy a ton of sweets? It smells amazing." When I came out in my hat and apron, he stood there in shock. "Luciana, how many sides of you haven't I seen?" Back then, I felt proud, revealing new sides of myself to David every day. I never imagined I was exhausting my hidden depths. After all, I wasn't omnipotent, was I? Chapter 14. I listened quietly as he reminisced about the past, not saying a word. If he sought sweetness in his memories, I was searching for poison. The more I remembered my omnipotence back then, the more ridiculous I felt. Every effort to showcase my strengths only highlighted my weaknesses in comparison. I didn't know whether to blame David for his indecisiveness, unable to appreciate the simple joys of life, or to blame myself for being so selflessly good to him. That memory had been buried for too long. The details had faded, making it feel bland. He was clearly excited, starting off quietly before holding my hand tightly. "Luciana, I was out of my mind back then. Will you forgive me?" I focused on his choice of words. Back then. So, he had been planning to break up for quite some time. Maybe it was when I reminded him to lift his feet to sweep away the dust while he worked late in the study, or when I told him his clothes were already hung up for the next day, or even when we discussed a trip to the nearby city. Every moment I spent with him, seeing him as the most boring person, contributed to his excuse for breaking up. Ultimately, his reason was absurdly superficial, showing his eagerness to end things without bothering to think deeply about it. I withdrew my hand and glanced around. No one seemed to notice us. Still, I told him, "Shoo, don't say anything, you'll disturb others." Chapter 15. He offered to drive me home. I pointed to the car outside, and he followed me back. As we waited side by side at a red light, our eyes met. Yet, we could no longer say what a coincidence like we did on that bus years ago. Of course, we had returned to that fateful city. We took a bus around, moving slowly through its streets. I sat while he stood, holding my hand tightly. He urged me to look up, and I gradually saw the red house revealing its sharp peak, eventually exposing its mysterious full form as we turned. The year before, he had gone first, and I followed his pointing finger to see the sights he had enjoyed. The next year, he brought me back, taking several photos by the red house. While I was focused on posing, he sneakily kissed my cheek and wished me a happy 158th day. He had been childish then, writing perfect in his planner every day. We had shared countless perfect days together. Eventually, perhaps too many perfect days turned dull. I realized it had been ages since I'd seen David write perfect. I spotted Augustine waiting downstairs at my place. David's car arrived shortly after. As I got out to greet him, I heard him say, "I'm late again." That phrase sounded familiar. After sifting through memories with David, I finally recalled when I first heard him say it. Not long after David and I got together, we returned home hand in hand after a night run. We saw Augustine at the entrance. He also said, "Luciana, I'm late," before rushing off, leaving me confused. Now, here it was again. I must have matured. My experiences had sharpened my insight. Suddenly, I thought about Augustine's words in a surprising way. David stepped out and hurried over. He paused close to me, briefly touching my hand before retracting it quickly, trying to keep his voice steady. He asked, "Luciana, what's wrong?" I found his flustered expression amusing and liberating. I instinctively urged him, "It's nothing. You should go." He wanted to hold my hand, mustering the courage to come closer. I pulled away. Augustine interjected, "Luciana, I just got off the plane and rushed here. Can you have a meal with me?" Then he asked David, "Care to join?" David replied he was busy and had to leave. Chapter 16. Augustine didn't seem hungry. He hardly ate. Yet, he had plenty to say. When he confessed his feelings for me, I genuinely had no recollection. He laughed at my obliviousness. Suddenly, I remembered when David had hinted to me that he liked someone, and I hadn't picked up on it. He once complained that girls seemed oblivious to his signals. I had blamed him for being shy, not speaking up clearly. He even mentioned not wanting to be in the same city as the girl he liked. I hadn't considered that he was referring to me. I thought, if a girl isn't willing to reach out and he isn't either, then there's no possibility at all. He asked, "Luciana, do you think a direct confession would work?" I estimated an 80% chance of success. I told him that if I were in his position, I'd likely feel moved. So, a few days later, he rushed over. When I stood there stunned, David patted my head and asked, "Luciana, you're not shocked, are you? You said you'd be touched." That's when I realized the girl David had liked for so long was me. Given my cluelessness, I probably needed things to be straightforward. Augustine thought the same. He sighed, "Luciana, I'm not hiding it anymore since I gathered the courage to come to you twice. Can you give me a chance?" He looked serious when he said, "Luciana, I'm ready for everything. I just need you to give me a chance." Chapter 17. I received a picture from David, a photo of the cat. "Wind fate." He texted, "The cat misses you, and so do I." I found it amusing and ignored him, letting him stew over what Augustine and I might be doing. It felt fair, considering I had seen him interact with new girls, only to be left sleepless. Sure enough, after I counted to 20, David called. He opened with the same line I expected, "Luciana, sorry, wrong number." Before I could respond, Augustine brought me a cup of water. "Luciana, the temperature is just right. Try it." David hung up instantly. No creativity whatsoever. I had my rejection ready, but it never came into play. Augustine, after confessing, wasn't in a hurry for an answer. "Lucy, there's plenty of time." He easily found a way to pivot our relationship. He used to call me Luciana, but tonight, it was Lucy. Chapter 18. When I returned, I overindulged in coffee. Now, at this hour, sitting in the living room reading and daydreaming was my own fault. Since leaving David, I hadn't made progress with my reading. I tried to name my new succulent something elegant and artistic but nearly ruined a whole book of poetry. In the end, I settled on Little Succulent because I couldn't think of anything else. I recalled when I wrote the characters for Phonine with a brush for David to see. He smelled the ink and said, "So this is what the scent of ink is like." Those words were framed and hung in their designated places. I didn't realize that would be my shining moment. I should have taken them with me when I left. I received another call from David. This call was unexpected. I never stayed out this late. He knew that too. When I picked up, he asked, "Luciana, can't sleep? Want me to keep you company?" As I heard a car pass by outside and on the phone, I asked where he was. Moving to the window. When I pulled back the curtain, I saw him standing below, looking up at me. I couldn't sleep, so I came out for a walk. He said, "Luciana, do you have time tonight? I want to talk." I knew after seeing Augustine, he would be restless. If I said just one word to Augustine, David would remain there, gazing up at my window. Chapter 19. Yet, I still didn't go down to see David. I couldn't find a reason to meet him. The moment he signaled for reconciliation, I considered agreeing. If I swallowed my feelings and never mentioned it again, we could go on for years, maybe even decades, in peace. I had truly planned to spend my life this way, but then he brought up newness. After exploring out there, he wanted to come back to me. I couldn't guess whether it was love or if he realized I was better after comparison. I just knew that I hadn't changed. His previous disdain for my dullness and routine hadn't altered either. He could still predict my decisions and how I would speak. As I pondered, I realized my memory and thinking had declined with age, not to mention making progress or being innovative. Just maintaining the status quo felt like a luxury. I would grow old, become forgetful, and slow to respond. Eventually, I might be unable to care for myself or suffer from dementia. At that point, what I brought to David wouldn't just be boring. It wouldn't be overthinking. It's a reality that people regress. I felt that once he had dismissed me, it would happen again. I just didn't know if he'd criticize my slower reactions or my diminished decisiveness. Ultimately, if he truly wanted to leave, any excuse would suffice for a breakup. When I was younger, I could pretend to be nonchalant about it. But when I grew old, I could foresee a less than beautiful conclusion. Rather than avoiding David, I was sidestepping risks. Chapter 20. The post office called to inform me about a letter. I almost forgot it existed. It was about our adventures in a third city. We felt lucky to have met in 3 different places. After exploring, we decided to thank fate. We came up with the idea of writing letters simultaneously. Since we couldn't thank our past selves, we wrote to our future selves. The slow mail idea was David's. He said, "Luciana, let's try this. I bet I'll love you even more when we receive this letter." When I opened it, I found his brief note. Haha. Did I predict this? "Luciana, reward me with a kiss." His writing was carefree and direct. I remembered sitting at separate tables while writing. To maintain the mystery for a few years later, I peered over a few times. Getting scolded by David, I handed him my letter, eager to swap and read it immediately. My curiosity wouldn't let me wait. Once the letter was at the post office, my impatience finally subsided. No wonder he had been laughing while writing. My letter likely looked messy, filled with doodles, ending with, "David, if you love me more tomorrow, hug me." We naively believed those magical encounters could last forever. We thought, as long as we held hands tightly, we could never let go. But later, I learned love is about lifting high. While life requires bending down, I had to tie my shoes, wash rice, chop vegetables, and work. I always chose to momentarily release David's hand to deal with daily life. While I busied myself with life, David continued to enjoy love. We were clearly on different paths. Chapter 21. I guess David received my letter too. When he called, he asked, "Luciana, where are you? I want to hug you." He clearly hadn't grasped the meaning. I said, "If you love me more, come hug me." I didn't believe his love now surpassed the love he had for me before he grew weary. Back then, every day revolved around earning money and marrying me. It wasn't about finding excuses to win me back now. Wasn't that a downward spiral? Perhaps he was truly at the end of his rope. As he began to cry, I seldom saw him cry. He was always busy around me, busy with work, loving me, and resenting me. I must admit, I was petty. Even now, I fixated on the way he casually suggested breaking up that day. I remembered how relieved he was when I agreed. He thought he had finally gotten rid of me with a poor excuse. He never imagined things would come to this reversal. He had been prepared never to look back. I knew my fingerprints had long been erased from his door lock. His place was likely cleared of my belongings. But the slap in the face came too quickly, like when I cherished those moments of him being grateful for having me. He sought that thrill with others, hoping to find someone better than me. Yet those fleeting encounters weren't enough to hold a candle to our history. I felt helpless to comfort him. He messed up, and he was the one crying over his foolishness. Just as I had no right to force him to stay, I had no right to console him now. Wasn't he the one who believed in fate? Then let fate take back everything. Fate had brought him to me, allowed him to love and tire of me. Now, it would decide whether he'd have a second chance with me. Chapter 22. This year's vacation became another solo journey for me. As usual, I posted departing in my social circle. This time, I planned to explore just one city. When night fell, I found a small restaurant to satisfy my hunger. Just as I took a bite, I received a call from Augustine. "Lucy, I've traveled a long way again. Send me your location. I'll take a cab from the airport." I laughed. "I don't believe you." Then I got up to meet him at the airport. Suddenly, I heard a knock on my window. David stood there, just like back in the day. "Luciana, I've come to keep you company." At that moment, I believed in fate. No earlier, no later, everyone adjusted their paths perfectly for this moment. Such a connection only happens once for everyone. David had already used up his chance last time. End of main text. Epilogue. After dating Augustine for a year, we had completed all the steps and set a wedding date. It felt entirely different from my time with David. David seemed to think we had all the time in the world. Slowly savoring the echoes of our first meeting, Augustine preferred a sense of certainty, trying to secure me tighter and tighter. I followed Augustine to the city where he lived, intending to clear my mind, but I fell in love with the place. More realistically, Augustine was doing better than I was. If someone had to make sacrifices for us to be together, I felt it should be me. When I expressed my thoughts to Augustine, he told me, "Lucy, just wait for me to come to you. You don't have to feel obligated." I suddenly understood that while I praised my loyalty to David, he was busy celebrating his sacrifices to pursue me. The difference was I appreciated his sacrifices, while he expected my kindness as a given. So, our separation was inevitable. After our wedding, when we returned to host friends, I learned about David's situation. He had been traveling back and forth to the cities where we had met over the past year. What he was searching for, I couldn't say. Perhaps he was reminiscing about the impulsiveness of youth, trekking to a strange city for someone, or maybe he was reflecting on the weight of what he had said to me that day. He could never grasp that even after a long time together, I envisioned a future that included him. So when he casually mentioned losing the spark, I felt profound disappointment. Encouraged by friends, Augustine recited his wedding vows again. He was emotional, even long after the ceremony. He still cried when expressing his feelings for me. Since we had an early flight, the gathering ended quickly. On the way home, I received a call from David. It was unexpected. We hadn't spoken since that day. Feeling annoyed, I muted the call, planning to let it go to voicemail. Augustine kissed my cheek and said, "Answer it. What if it's important?" I had never heard his voice sound so hoarse, as if he had just woken from a bender. He called my name, "Luciana." I softly replied, "Where are you? Can you come back? I got you a wedding gift." He explained he hadn't meant to miss our celebration. He had just slept too long. Of course, I knew. Since I walked in, a friend who had witnessed my relationship with David told me she had made sure he wouldn't come today by getting him drunk. She insisted that David still had a hidden agenda, claiming he'd wait until I was single again. She even scoffed, saying it was absurd. As we exited the highway, we were almost at the airport. After settling in this new city, I rarely returned. My friend had just joked that by the next time we met, I might be pregnant. I had fantasized countless times about marrying David in this city, raising our children alongside our friends' kids. I never expected to end up living elsewhere with someone else. I fell silent for a long time. He continued calling my name. "Luciana?" I told him, I can't come back. Our flight is about to take off. I heard him crying but felt powerless to comfort him. Without saying goodbye, I hung up. I had poured everything into the love for which he had sacrificed. I remembered him asking, Luciana, will you always treat me well? I envisioned caring for him for a lifetime, but I didn't anticipate that such devotion could cool as quickly as warm water. The warmth faded. And ultimately, my heart did too.